we always make two offers. When a house has stuff, we say, here's our as-is offer, and here's our cleaned-out offer. And we
Interesting.
We always do that almost every single deal, especially in the probate deals, because 9 out of every 10 probate deals we buy, we're buying them with all the stuff, too. We're buying... They take their keepsakes and what they want out of the house, and the rest they sell to us with all the junk, all the garbage, and they are so thrilled that they don't have to clean this house out.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Probate House Guy podcast. We're in a different setting here. It's a beautiful day. I'm on my back porch, and I've got a guest in person today. My buddy Colin Beck, all the way from Cincinnati, Ohio, is down here in the ATL, and Colin is a flipper extraordinaire, TV star, name it all. So, Colin, why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, flipper, rehabber, out of Cincinnati. I guess I guess maybe the best place to start is why I even know who you are. Which goes back to a little show called Flippin' Showdown that I happened to get the opportunity to flip a wonderful property that Brad sourced. And it just so happened to be very close to his future residence. And I think one of my favorite, maybe one of our more bonding moments in that was when somebody had a little extra well concrete and somebody else maybe needed a little bit of driveway, right? So nothing like sharing a little bit of concrete finishing,
right,
to get to know each other.
Yeah, I got this scar on my hand right here from finishing concrete in June when it was hot and I wasn't expecting to finish concrete. You guys were busy filming, right? Mind you, this was literally like 100 yards that way, like to where I'm pointing is where we were filming this episode. Check out my other podcast episode where I talk about that land deal, how I got my lot for free. I break down that entire deal and discuss that. But
I was part of that budget.
You were part of that budget.
You know it at the time.
Right. You were part of that. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you got a little bit of money out of it at the end of the day.
I did. It definitely worked out in my favor.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So what happened? You were like, I said, hey, oh, by the way, I'm going to have an extra yard of concrete. So I had to fill in a well on my property here. There was a well. We had to abandon it because it was going to be within 150 feet of my future septic system. So we had to abandon it properly. So what I did is they basically, if you've never had a well filled before, they basically pour some gravel and stuff in the bottom, and then they put bentonite clay, which basically expands and seals the hole. And then on top of the bentonite, they pour concrete all the way up almost to just below grade, and then they fill the rest in with dirt at the top. And we basically had to order a whole truck. Anyways, we had like 7 yards of concrete, and we were going to have, I think we only needed like 4 to fill in the hole. So we had like 3 more yards. So I called you the night before and I said, hey, I knew you were going to be working over there. I said, hey, we got some extra concrete. Do you want to form some pads up like the bottom of the deck stairs or whatever? And you said, sure. And then I show up the next day and you formed up the driveway apron at the beginning, right at the street. And so anyways, me and you and Christina, we all start, raking out the concrete or whatever, and then you have to go film, and then I'm just like stuck for a minute there.
I didn't think it. Did I get dragged off of that for real?
You did. Well, we got it all raked out, and we got it screeded off. But when it came time to finishing it, I said, hey, where's your bull float? And you said, what bull float?
Yeah, because I had there. Oh my gosh, there's so much more that goes into that. This is just one of so many stories from that entire time, because I got a call, and actually you reached out to Dave because I don't think we knew each other really at that point. I had just heard of this legend that was Brad Woodall. David asked me about it. Ken had asked me about it. And so Dave calls me, who's one of the guys involved in this, Dave calls me. It's like 7:30, I think. It was late. It was dark when I went to Lowe's. I know that. So,
Right.
And I didn't go to Lowe's long after I heard from Dave. And so Dave says, hey, we've got extra concrete. One of the stipulations for what you got to do, you want the extra concrete. We're trying to save pennies wherever we can, anywhere we can. Yes, of course I want the concrete. Let me be very clear. I'm not a concrete finisher. I'm not good with concrete. I don't actually really even know. But what I do know about myself is I can figure stuff out. So when I got that offer, I went to Lowe's and I went to the concrete aisle. Now, keep in mind, I'm trying to save pennies. So I go to the concrete aisle and I'm like, let's buy the cheapest stuff I can. I bought a trowel. I didn't buy 2 trowels, or I acquired a trowel. I bought 2 trowels, a float, an edger.
Floats.
No, I think I bought a trowel and a float. Probably we used them both. Anyway, and then I show up the next morning, and yeah, you're not kidding when you say it was just shy of 1,000,000 degrees. And that was when I showed up I think I got there it was like 6:45 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I start hand digging this thing out. It's the only option I've got. And the well guy shows up. So I am after it from 7 o'clock. I think the well guy came, who had an excavator there. But I'm not just going to go over and steal his mini X.
Right.
He shows up. He starts putzing around with whatever you're doing with the well. I don't know yet. And as he's wrapping up and rolling away, I'm like, bro, can I borrow the blade? Can you come over and just blade this off? And so he bladed everything off for me, which was...
Harold Welchel at Welchel Plumbing in Canton, Georgia. Harold is an awesome guy, super helpful guy, great guy. So shout out to Harold Welchel at Welchel Plumbing. He's
yeah, dude, I think that's the dude that helped me. And much obliged, because then I was able to actually start forming up. And the concrete was showing up at 11. So we're at 9, and I haven't even started forming yet. And yeah, so by the time Brad shows up, you got here right before the concrete truck got here.
Something like that.
Man, yeah. Then got roped into your cameo.
Right? I did. Yeah, I walked out. You'll see me show up. I'm wearing my my Piggly Wiggly shirt.
You are wearing it, that's right.
My Piggly Wiggly t-shirt from Hilton Head Island. And my muck boots. Those were my quasi-concrete boots for the day, was my muck boots, because they were, I was the only one that had waterproof boots that could get into the concrete and rake it out.
That's right. You didn't know what you were signing up.
That's right.
You didn't realize that the free concrete that you were giving away was actually going to cost you more.
And I had no sunscreen on because I was not expecting to be finishing concrete out that day. And if anyone knows, concrete waits for no one.
No one.
Right?
I still can't believe I actually abandoned you. That makes me really...
You had to go film a bunch of stuff because Molly was like, hey...
Yeah, she was like,
you guys got to film these segments or whatever. So you ran off. You're like, hey, I'll be back and I'll help you finish when I'm back. So I'm out there on my hands and knees with 2 floats, just hand floating on my hands and knees on a piece of plywood, and hand floated that whole driveway. And you can look at the driveway and you can tell that it was hand floated. And we didn't have an actual, like concrete broom to do the broom finish. We had a push broom. A broken push broom. The broken push broom is why I have this scar on my hand. So we're at the very end, and I think we had like probably 4 broom strips left to do. And you had just finished your filming, and you came back over, and after I would pull the broom across, I would pat the broom out to shake the turds out of the bristles. And as I shook it down, the end of the broom sliced into the meat of my hand, like right here, and I just started bleeding profusely.
Oh, yeah. There
was a lot of blood.
It looked like a razor blade. The broom had like been bent, but we were kind of hanging on for dear life, right? Because we needed that extra 2 feet. We needed every bit of it. But yeah, and what an adventure. That was how I met.
That was right. Yeah. So immediately I ran off to urgent care to go get stitches in my hand. I walk into urgent care. I smell like crap. I still have concrete on my boots. I get up on the table at the urgent care place. Luckily, there's an urgent care place like a mile that way. Like, it's very, very close. So I went straight there. They stitched me up. I think I needed 2 stitches or 3 stitches or something like that in my hand. And anyways, I still have a scar today to prove it. And that house won you the show too.
That
That was the final.
A third of it. That was the final house.
Right.
There was a lot. I didn't know what I was. I tend to. Well, how we picked our houses on that was very interesting though too.
Yes.
It's very much a like whichever one you decide from the 4 pictures that they send to you. That's pretty much the one you got because they were all over the city. So if you didn't, it was first come first serve. And
yeah,
I picked a couple doozies, man.
I sourced a few houses for that for Ken, and actually this house was not supposed to be on the show originally. We had another house that was down in Ackworth near the lake off Kellogg Creek Road that was going to be on the show. And they had already ordered materials and stuff for that house.
Oh, that's right. They had a whole extra set of windows.
They did. So it was in probate, and the probate didn't finish in time for the filming to start. So we had to take a last-minute audible and pick this house because we were going to tear this house down and build a new construction house here. And we had to do a last-minute audible because he needed a heavy rehab for the show. Because Ken called me like, I don't know, 6 or 7 months before the show started filming, and he said, hey, I need an easy rehab, I need a medium rehab, and I need a big, like, heavy rehab. Keep me in mind. So I sold him Sunlight Drive, the one in Woodstock that Nashville folks.
Yeah, Mike and Amy did it. I never got to see them before on that, which made me really sad because
it smelled like it was a cigarette house. They smoked in it heavily. It was so dark. The ceilings were really low. There was an addition done. And what you didn't see on the show, there was this huge barn in the back of the house that they didn't really show. You can see it in some of the clips on the show. There's this massive barn in the back.
That went with the house, right? They didn't tear it down, right?
No, and anyways, that was a crazy story after the fact that Dave told me about, that the buyers of that house, the guy tried to pull a fast one, and they had subdivided the back. Because Ken and I had done quite a few deals where we would buy, we'd buy a piece, I'd wholesale him a piece of the land, he would subdivide it, and I would get a profit split off of that. And so Sunlight was going to be one of those deals where I wholesaled it to him, and then they split it off, and they were going to build in the back.
Well, because you had an option on the property next door, right?
Well, kind of. We were talking to the seller, the lady next door, the guy, literally just waiting on this guy to die. I know that sounds morbid, but literally his wife was like, hey, as soon as he dies, I'm going to sell you this property. Like, she already told us that. You know, we had met with him and his wife, and he wasn't in very good health. He's actually still alive.
Oh, man, still waiting on him to die.
2 years later. Joel still follows up with him. Joel's my acquisitions guy. Joel still follows up with him or her and checks in on, because he lives right down the road, so he just pops in and says hi.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I sourced that one, and there was one other one.
Like, you didn't source Oakstone, which was Douglasville.
No, I didn't do Douglasville.
You didn't have there was the...
Maybe that was it. Maybe.
I think those were the only two that you... Yeah, you had the Lake one, the Ackworth one too, but it didn't end up...
It didn't pan out, yeah. And what was funny is because he was going to use one of my private lenders, Ken was going to use one of my private lenders as the lender for the deal, and when the show didn't work out, he ended up bailing out, and actually she bought the house, the lender that was going to lend.
That's right, you said...
Dina. Her and I do a lot of deals together, and she's one of my lenders too. And she ended up buying the house, so Ken gave her the windows at cost, nice. Basically, whatever they cost.
Because they got a deal on.
Well, they were custom fit for that house. It was a contemporary modern house, so these windows were like custom made. A lot of them were custom for this house, so they were no good anywhere else. She ended up rehabbing that. She ended up spending $170,000 on the rehab of that house. The original budget was like $130,000, I think, and then there was a foundation problem that we didn't see until after the house, all the junk got cleaned out. There was like a collapsed wall in the basement where someone had run a car into it.
Oh my gosh!
So, anyways, she still made money on that house. She did well on it. But yeah. So tell me about like filming a TV show, right? How did you get roped into that, and what was that experience like? I mean, you were already kind of flipping and stuff to begin with, so.
Yeah, we'd been flipping. That was 2021. We got reached out to in 20. It would have been 2020 that we got reached out to.
Okay.
And so we got reached out to via our Instagram. Hey, you interested in this? Which it's not. I'm assuming you've been reached out to before. It's not uncommon to get somebody. Hey, we want to try to put a deal together. The start to finish on a deal for one of these shows is 2 years. By the time you do the sizzle, the pilot goes through all the turnaround and all that kind of stuff, and they get an idea developed, you're looking at 2 years. So we had been down the path enough times at that point in time that we were like, man, like, we'll listen to you. Why not? Well, we had our first phone call and the guy's like, this is different. We're casting for a show. We're not trying to pitch a show. Show's already sold. HGTV's already picked it up. We're just casting for it. Where I was like, okay, that's cool. And I went into it with the same kind of, this is fun, but not going to go anywhere that I got to go into everything with, right? Christina and I would sit down. Everything was over Zoom. Everything was over Zoom. So Christina and I'd sit on the Zoom call, talk to the producers. They'd be like, we'd get done. We'd be like, that's cool. It's not going to go anywhere. And then a month later, they'd reach back out to us and say, hey, you're on to the next round. You're on to that happened over again. And we never thought, we finally got told that we were cast in, I think September of
20.
Was it 20? It was either 19 or 20. This might have all been happening in 19. Because we were supposed to leave. I can't remember all the dates now. It's been so long ago. But anyway, it was all through that. We got cast, and then they're like, hey, you're moving. But COVID's going on. Like, it was at the end of 20. The COVID's going on, so they're like, we don't know when you can go. You're going to go this time, and it was always next month. And finally we got to the point where we're like, are we ever going?
Right.
And it was like 6 months later. So yeah, it would have been September 20 that we got cast, and then in February 21 we came down here. And I mean, it was such a cool experience. You don't get that experience. It was stressful because it was a competition show, but it was cool because we knew going in that it was not an elimination show,
right?
Which I can't imagine going through a show where you've got to do something and then go through some kind of
style.
Yeah, like that. That would be a lot, but that's how we got hooked up with it. Went through the process, and then they sent us down here, got us hooked up with an Airbnb down here.
Yep.
We'd never been to Atlanta before. Well, not for any period of time.
Right.
And so
flying through the airport, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big airport, but for the airport.
Right. That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. And then the filming, just me learning, I had been on some other stuff that Ken had done locally. Some of the other, when him and Anita were on Flip or Flop, I was like an extra in one of the episodes. I was a real estate agent. Technically, I'm a real estate.
There you go. Hey, look at that.
In the Gresham Park house on Flip or Flop Atlanta. And then also the Milton house in Flip or Flop. Actually, Ken and I did that deal together. I was
awesome.
Like, I put that deal together, brought that deal to the table and all that, and then got same thing, which I do a lot of deals with him where I'll do an upfront wholesale fee, wholesale it to him, and then I get a percentage of profit after the fact.
Cool.
Like once it sells, because that was also a subdivide deal.
Because he loves those subdivides.
Yeah, he loves to buy stuff and subdivide it out. So that was the first one I did with him. That was early. I was 2018. I was pretty new in the business at that point. And I've been doing it. That was my first full-time, full year in it.
18 was your first year?
18 is, well, when I went full-time. I quit in January 2018.
Okay. There you go.
So, yeah, and so I'd been on the shows, and that's a lot of work, man. Those are long days filming.
So we show up the first day, and they didn't mention this. We've been talking to them for 6 months, and they don't mention a production day. It's a 12-hour day.
Yep.
That's as soon as they hire a camera out, he's there for 12 hours, or he's getting paid for 12 hours.
Right.
Whether he does 10 minutes or 12 hours, he's getting paid for 12 hours.
Right.
So they work those.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't realize that. We show up and we're like, okay, our call time for the first day was 7 a.m. We show up at 7 a.m. and we hit lunch. I think it was 1:30, maybe 2. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, carry the want. Oh, we're going to be here a while. We're only halfway through. And so we started realizing, and that's kind of the biggest thing I think that was surprising to me was the amount of, I think that somebody said they had 45 terabytes of video.
Probably.
I don't know that they sorted through all of that at all, but there was a lot of video. And then the process. Yeah, you do something, then you have to tell, because you can't, like, nobody knows what you're thinking. They can't tell what you're thinking. You don't have thought bubbles.
Right.
So they do the little, like, you stand side by side with whoever you're with, and you talk to the producer while you're there. And that's how you get the thought. What were you thinking when you did? And they have a bunch of questions. That was what I got toted off when we were doing the concrete.
Yeah.
I got pulled away because they're like, well, what are you thinking? And I'm like, I'm thinking this concrete's going to set before I'm done with it.
Right.
I'm pretty sure.
Poor Brad, he's over there by himself.
I know, right? I was like, I think that my free labor is going to be a little bit mad that I'm not laboring.
It wasn't free labor for because I was getting paid, right?
Yeah, that's true. I was technically the free labor.
You were the free labor. That profit paid for this, like, land we're sitting on today.
Oh man. There's so much good with that. But yeah, that was that picking the houses. I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I mean, even just the things. This is mid-2021. I don't know if anybody remembers mid-2021, and like the fact that 2x4s, 2x4x8s were $10.
Right.
That makes reframing a house all of a sudden really expensive.
Yep.
Which we had to do next door. And so I think the other thing that was interesting is we were all kind of making this up as we went. We got assigned a general contractor, but I've always been, on all of my flips, I was always general contractor. I always just did it myself.
Yep.
So having to work through somebody and not knowing quality of sub,
the quality of sub, the brick masons are great. I'll share a picture of this brickwork at this house. It's hilarious. We still joke about that today.
Yeah,
it's funny
from here.
Yeah,
I had nothing to do with that. I'm just happy that I saved the roof.
Yes,
because they put a porch on it that was 4 layers of roof up, and then we re-roofed it and had to redesign the
I remember the
valleys.
Yeah,
so many things that you're like, I'm standing on a roof, speaking to a roofing crew, trying to like get this, the porch to be right because it's got an inch at the 4 or 5 layers of roof on top. You're only supposed to do 2, by the way.
Yeah, you should only do 1, but
you can do a layover. You can get away with it.
You can do a layover, but it's not a good idea. Not recommended, but it's allowed. Yeah, this was
one of us flips new houses. One of us flips old houses.
That's right. Well, let's talk about that. Let's roll into that. So the wind's picking up a little bit. The sun's coming down. So you flip in Cincinnati, which is an older housing stock in general near the city.
Yeah, where I am.
Right, where you're at. So, and you have a kind of a different kind of house up there, a lot of masonry.
Oh, so much masonry, which is why I'm like, I have a good mason.
Yeah.
He mocks me about masonry. I'm like, it's just because you Georgia boys don't know what to do with masonry.
Well, I have good masons too.
Apparently,
yeah,
the guy.
But they didn't do that.
Yeah, they didn't. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, that's I would say that my specialty was masonry, like brick, block, side by side, structural walls, masonry houses built between 1940 and 1960 are most of what we've done. It's what I learned. It's what I was good at. It's what I knew. I knew how to buy them. Mm-hmm. I could go in there and tell you exactly what it was going to cost. And then I also knew, because I knew the masonry side of it, that we could do some pretty cool stuff with them, because I had a good masonry guy.
And knowing the houses that you're renovating is key. Like, I've done so many here in Atlanta. I know all the different kind of like decades of styles of houses. And I can kind of tell you right off the bat, like within 10 grand of what that's going to cost to renovate just by looking at it. Because in your case, you're doing all new mechanicals on pretty much most of those houses anyways, right?
Like, I remember a phone call that I had with you about, I bet it's been about a year ago now, where you and I FaceTimed, and I said, hey, this is my cosmetic rehab that I'm working on. And you said, the you're down to the studs in the kitchen and bathroom. There's nothing cosmetic about this rehab. And that was when I realized that you and I did different levels of, we had different terms for different things.
And even locally, I know people who do that and call that, I call a cosmetic rehab carpet and paint.
Yeah.
Like carpet, paint, put granite in the kitchen, change out appliances, maybe change the kitchen cabinets, right? You're not tearing into walls. That's the moment you start tearing into walls, I consider that like sort of a more medium level rehab.
Yeah.
Right. To me, cosmetic is you're not tearing into walls.
This was the reason I called it cosmetic was it was the first non-structural rehab I had done in a long time. I did not take out a bearing wall anywhere in this house. And so that made it cosmetic because technically I was only changing pretty things.
There you go. And you guys make some pretty houses. So your wife, Christina, is a designer, and she does a fantastic job with design. She even does some design consultation stuff locally and to investors throughout. And she does some really, which is probably why you guys got picked for the show, I would imagine, because you do some top-notch, and you don't cut corners.
No.
Which, why don't you talk about that a little bit and what you've learned about that over the years? And
don't cut corners. I mean, it's interesting. I think that my biggest regrets from houses, if I look back on them, are places where I tried to save money.
Yeah.
I have multiple examples of places where I was like, oh, we can save money by not fully address. You're not going all the, and every time it came back and
bite you.
And bite you. It's always something that's like, oh, if we don't do this, maybe, so yeah, it hurts. I had one, I've had multiples that, you get to the end and you're like, I wish I would have spent that money when I had the opportunity, or especially when you do something. I think the worst, is when you do something, but you don't go. I had a furnace that my HVAC guy and I chased this furnace the entire time. I mean, I bet we had 8 or 9 hours in trying to figure out why it would just like leak water onto the ground. Yeah, the weirdest thing.
Right.
Intrinsically, furnace still made hot air.
Right.
And ultimately, we went through the whole thing and kept chasing this, kept trying to figure it out. Is it an inducer motor? Is it a plumbing thing?
Right.
And to give context on this was in 2018 that we did this house. And the furnace was installed in 2016.
Okay, so it's a new furnace.
We're not talking about
high efficiency furnace?
Yes.
It was not. Yeah,
it was 90%.
One of mine leaked upstairs because they didn't connect the PVC pipe on because high efficiency furnaces create condensate.
Yeah, a lot
of condensate actually. And mine, all of a sudden, after the first time I used the furnace, because we moved in this house in the summer, and the first winter when I started using it, my heat was off, and I go upstairs and my drain pan full of water, and I'm like, what the heck? And I open up the front cabinet, and the HVAC guy never connected the condensate drain to the PVC pipe was coming through the cabinet, and it just needed to be connected, and it just, I don't know what happened, and it was leaking inside the cabinet and then draining into the pan.
And let's be honest, let's be happy they actually put a pan there, right, and actually hooked up a switch to it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yes, code says you have to do that, but
right,
the number of times I've just seen a pan below it with no switch on it.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, what's the point of the pan?
Right. Yeah, I learned about safety switches the hard way with a rental property that we had years ago. It was my wife's old condo when me and my wife met. She had a condo and I had a house. We both had dogs, so she moved in with me in the house, so the dogs had a fenced-in backyard, and we decided to rent out of her condo. That was right after the crash, and we basically had no choice to rent it because we were upside down on the condo, and there were restrictions in the neighborhood. The HOA wouldn't let you rent it. You had to be approved, and she'd been on a waiting list for like 2 years. So we finally decided to just rent this thing under the table to her sister's friend, who looks very similar to Becky. Same height, also has a small little black dog. So we rented it to her friend at first, and then there was a whole shakeup on the HOA board. Actually, the HOA board got sued for fraud. Turns out there was an old boys club. People were approved to rent, but they were not renting their units and just holding their spot and not letting other people have it. So then all the board people got fired because there was a lawsuit. And anyways, all of a sudden, magically, they called us one day and they're like, "Oh, you can rent this place out." And we said, "Oh, great, that's awesome." And then the next day, we sent them a lease. We had it leased out in a day. Imagine that, right?
Wow. I mean, we had a waiting list.
It's the fastest,
worked great,
fastest tenancy ever. So, anyways, but it had a pan and it leaked in the air conditioning one day, and I had replaced over the winter. I had replaced all the floors in the place, pull up all the carpets, and put bamboo hardwoods in this whole place. Of course, I walk in one day to change the air filter out because whoever installed this furnace, like, you had to remove the closet door because it was too far over and the door was in the way, and I wasn't going to make my tenant have to remove a closet door to change an air filter out. Normally, I make my tenants change the air filters out, but I didn't want her to have to do it, so I would go over there every 90 days or whatever and just change the filter out. So I go over there, and I walk in, and I see all the hardwood floors, like, cut, like buckled in the kitchen, and I'm like, oh, no, we have water in there. I immediately knew there was water in there, and so I started pulling up the flooring. Water, turns out it was the air conditioner, drained into the pan. The pan was tilted back just a little bit, so it was draining out the back of the pan down the wall.
Just enough to not trip the switch?
Well, there was no switch. There was no safety switch on it. So then we put a safety switch on it. Safe T switch. It's a T. But the pan didn't have a switch either. So we ended up installing that, and it was fine, but we still had to file an insurance claim, and water got the downstairs unit. So we had to fix some drywall in the lady downstairs and the condo downstairs. And we had to replace the hardwood floors, and we had to replace a bunch of stuff, dry the place out for like 3 days. That was a learning experience. So if your furnace doesn't have a shut-off switch on it, highly recommend. And put a safety switch and a pan switch.
If you're in the living area. The nice thing about this furnace was, I mean, now it doesn't sound as bad. It was an unfinished basement. So
there you go.
It just
easy
got leaking. But you don't want to.
No,
it's really hard to sell a house when
buyers are like,
why is it leaking? And I had already waterproofed this basement, which those floors are hilarious. Anyway, that's off topic. But we finally, I think it was we didn't even get asked for it in inspection. And on the last day, was like, I can't with a good conscience sell this. Now, this was back when furnaces we're talking 2018.
Yeah, that was in the good old days.
I did a furnace. I think I did
like $4,000. Probably.
I won't tell you what I actually did it for.
Yeah.
It was $1,000.
Well, just you bought the furnace. You got it from somebody.
Or maybe it was $1,500.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a buddy of mine install it.
Right.
Brand new furnace.
That was in the good old days.
Yeah, that was back when stuff was cheap. Yeah, I could do a furnace and AC back in the day for $3,500.
Yeah, last furnace I did this past year was like $8,000.
Yeah, 75 or 78 was the last one I did.
Yeah,
and then you couldn't get HVAC 10 and.
Oh yeah, when we were doing the my HVAC contractor got delayed on this house because we couldn't get enough. We couldn't get I told you that story.
Yeah,
the flex duct. My HVAC guy searched around everywhere for flex duct. This is when we had a flex duct shortage because that was when all the shipping containers, because a lot of the flex ducts made overseas in like China and stuff, comes over here. There was like literally shipping containers and container ships full of flex duct stuck in like Long Island, in the port of Long Island, and they couldn't get in.
That's right.
And so there was a huge flex duct shortage. So my HVAC guy finds a guy to get him flex duct. And this guy has a U-Haul truck that he rented and shows up at 8 o'clock at night and delivers the flex duct at night under the cover of darkness to my house. And my HVAC guy had to pay him cash.
Yeah. For the all your flex duct was in like 3 to 9 foot sections.
No, it was legit. Like
he had just cleared a bunch of construction sites of all their excess.
I don't know how he got it. And then we didn't have enough boots for the registers. We were 4 boots short. So actually we had to go ahead and do the rough-in. And then when the inspector came to do my rough inspection, I said, look, we couldn't get enough boots. We will have them for final inspection. So we had just left the pipe stubbed out there. And then when we got the boots finally, the inspector was cool and he finally checked it off on final inspection, but we were like 3 or 4 boots short of all the HVAC boots in this house.
Those are the ones where you look at the inspector and you go, I promise you, I want these as bad as you want me to have these.
Right. I can't get them.
Yeah. I will install them properly when I have them.
Yeah, when we moved into this house, our granite got delayed because the shipment of granite with quartz was delayed in shipment and delivery. So we had to get our CO in this house with plywood. I had to install plywood countertop to get our CO. And then the granite installers came and installed granite after we had already moved in.
Did you have countertops?
We had to have a countertop at the kitchen sink, and then we had to have like a space on either side of the stove. So we didn't have a countertop on this one wall here.
Interesting.
We had to have one on either side of the stove, and then we had to have the kitchen sink and the faucet installed. So we just did the plywood didn't cover the whole island in the middle. It just covered around the sink, and then we had the faucet mounted to the plywood.
Oh, because you got to have your plumbing done too.
Correct. You have to have a working kitchen sink and all that. And then about a week later, our quartz came in, and the installers came and installed it after we had already moved in the house.
I mean, that's the number of. I feel like we could do a whole podcast just on CO hacks. I've had the handrails. I mean, how many times have you had to? Mm-hmm. I passed an inspection with one handrail on 3 different locations.
Right,
that was fun.
I still have the piece of plywood here on my staircase, or plywood 2x4. I did white oak handrails through the house, and we ran out of white oak, and the lumber place had to order more white oak handrail, and it wasn't in time. And I had one little 3-foot section left to do on this little section, this little bitty piece of railing. And I literally got my router out, and I got a 2x4, and I rounded over I ripped it down to 3, because that's to be 3 inches, not 3.5. I ripped it down to 3 inches because it's got to be graspable. 3.5 is wider than graspable.
Yeah.
So it has to be 3 inches wide. So I ripped it down to 3 inches, and then I ran around over a bit on it, and I just screwed it in to the railing, and that was my railing, because I had to wait on the white oak. Didn't get delivered till a month after we moved in.
Wow.
So
in my opinion, handrails and smoke detectors are really all they care about.
Right.
That's what I've found. I had a conundrum in one of the last ones that I sold where the rule is that your handrail has to run to the bottom of the stairs.
Yes.
It has to cover the last step. Well, this would have caused a really weird knoll post. It would have been bizarre.
Right.
So I'm having this conversation with the inspector, of course.
Right.
Because that's what you do. You turn into a prosecutor, a defense attorney, essentially.
Right.
And you start going, well, what if I did this? And so I had to extend. He was like, I need a picture of the railing extended out to the end of it. He goes, what you do after I'm gone, that's up to you.
Right.
But I need to be able to say that that's where it was. And I need to be able to say that the deck had railings on it. So I put 2 railings on the deck.
Right.
That was easy. We also had to talk about how to do, the return, handle that.
Right.
And apparently, I had a long conversation with him about this. Apparently, that's a municipality, that's an interpretation thing.
Oh, is it?
Apparently. Because he said he's worked for a couple of different departments, and some care and some don't.
Right. Well, there's some that don't care.
I was like, that's interesting. But anyway, I took the railing off the wall, scooted it down so it stuck out by 3 feet, took a picture from the perfect angle where you couldn't tell that it didn't now go up the stairs, and he goes, good with me. I still have that picture, and I'm very proud of it.
Oh, the creative stuff.
Yep. Well, because he and I were talking about it, and he's like, I totally understand your predicament. He's like, this is a place where, you're right, if you pull it out, it's going to ruin the vibe of the room, because the stairs just kind of open. The last 2 stairs were wide open.
Right. Yeah.
And then you start getting into and we're way too far into the weeds right now. But you start getting into the 3 steps or 30 inches?
Correct.
And technically, I kind of had both of them.
Correct.
And we were arguing about, because the nose of the 3rd step came out past the wall, if it didn't come out past the wall, it wouldn't have applied. It's one of those where you end up in this and this is one where you don't care. This is probate house stuff. But understanding a little bit of the code book, if you're doing this stuff, is super, especially as an investor.
Oh, yeah.
Understanding what you're getting into. I don't know how often you're pulling permits on your flips. I was pulling
little as you need to.
Yes, yeah, I had to, because when you're doing a full 2-3 bedroom replumb, all of a sudden you have to, because your plumber looks at you and goes, bro, if I get caught, I lose my license. And you're like, that's a good reason to pull a permit.
Right.
So,
yeah, I hear you.
anyway, we got way off topic on
That's cool. So let's roll back into probate stuff, man. So I got you doing probate stuff years ago, talked you into it.
Yeah.
Years ago. Tell me about what do you think about it, your success with it? Like what?
I still think probate's the only way to buy houses. Sorry, not the only way, but I do think it's the best way to buy houses, because there's a legitimate need there.
Yep.
And a lot of times it is not a situation, like most of the time, actually every time that I've ever bought a house, I've never bought a house and been like, well, that was a happy situation.
Right.
Like I don't buy houses from happy situations, because people that have happy situations have other options.
Right.
Most of which include much more time.
Yep.
And so if you're in a situation where you've got a house that maybe wasn't taken care of because maybe the person can't take care of it,
right?
I like buying out of probate just because it felt like and I like taking old houses and making them newer.
Right. And the people are grateful in general, right?
Yeah.
All the people we work with are super grateful, and we get families. Our best deals are like out-of-state executors, right?
Yeah.
They inherit this house, or maybe we bought one a few months ago, back in the fall, and the guy that died here had no family here, so the house went to his like second cousin or something, and this guy was like had never even really known this guy, but he was the next of kin, and basically inherited this house. And he lived in Philadelphia, and the house was down here, and he's like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm coming down one day. I want to meet one day. And he met with like multiple investors. We were not his highest offer. We were like his lowest offer, but we met with him that day, and he loved us and wanted to do business with us and accepted our offer. And we did what we said we were going to do. And we were honest and straightforward with him. And I made him 2 offers because this was a house where we were going to subdivide the lot in half. And I said, if you can give me some due diligence, I'll give you a better offer, because I would like to subdivide this lot in half and sell the other lot off, and I can make money off of that, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to subdivide it yet. So if you can give me some due diligence, I can give you a better offer. And I said, but if you wanted me to make you an offer today, cash offer, no due diligence, this is my number today.
Yeah.
And he took my first number. He said, no, I don't want to wait on the due diligence. I want to sell it today. I'll take your offer. And oh, by the way, you can have everything in the house. So I got a $1,500 Rikon bandsaw out of that deal. It's in my shop downstairs. And I got maybe a year or 2 old Husqvarna lawn tractor from the deal, because this guy in Philadelphia wanted nothing.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
The fact that I mean, we usually, when people reach out, they're just like, oh, it's in no shape for you to see it. And it's like, hi,
no,
that's
right.
Promise.
I've seen
it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and my offer assumes I'm cleaning all of this crap out.
Correct.
And because it's like, you don't want to figure that the people that are like, we're going to get a dumpster. I'm like, you don't even know who to call to get a dumpster.
Right. And you're going to fill that dumpster up.
Yeah.
We always make 2 offers. When a house has stuff, we say, here's our as-is offer, and here's our cleaned-out offer. And we
interesting.
We always do that almost every single deal, especially in the probate deals, because 9 out of every 10 probate deals we buy, we're buying them with all the stuff, too. We're buying they take their keepsakes and what they want out of the house, and the rest they sell to us with all the junk, all the garbage, and they are so thrilled that they don't have to clean this house out.
Yeah.
So thrilled.
And then the guys that I pay to trash it out are super able to go in there and do that, even though some of them.
Oh, yeah. I've had some nasty ones.
But yeah, I think probate, the process is straightforward.
Right.
It's usually not, like, there's usually a timeline, but it's not, it's not, I need it tomorrow. It's I have found more often than not that the timeline for probate is, are you willing to work with us on whatever it is the family needs?
Yep.
You know, it could be, I just need this thing gone in a week, or it could be, hey, this person can't move out of here for 6 months. Can you, what can we do with that?
Right.
Get creative.
And you're creative, and you got to be a problem solver. And those are and you make the most money on those kinds of deals. And then, like, your wife's a licensed agent now.
Yes.
If you're doing probate deals, like 90% of these people are going to sell through an agent.
Yeah. In this market,
for sure. They're going to sell through an agent for sure. So always have that extra pathway, which that's what I've done through Probate House Guy and all that. We sell the agent depending on the market. If they're here in Georgia, then I do them because I'm a licensed agent in Georgia. But anywhere else, we sell the leads off to our agent partners because we know we're going to get these leads in our pipeline. And you know, I'm not an agent in Pocatello, Idaho, so I'm going to sell the lead off to the agent that one agent I work with, and they get the lead there in that market, and they run with it, and they list the house or whatever for the person.
Yeah.
But we're screening all the calls first to determine whether we think they're a better fit for an agent or a better fit for a cash offer. Because some people right off the bat, you can kind of weed them out and tell you're better off just listing with an agent. Like, we're not the right fit for you. And you disqualify them very quickly. You know, some people are like, oh, you shouldn't disqualify that quickly, but you actually should. Like, you should go for the no's first.
Yeah, especially if they're going to list with an agent. Like, there are so many people that believe that there's this crazy pie-in-the-sky number that you can get for it. And it's like, cool, give it a shot. It doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
At the end of the day, you can always call me back. You don't owe the agent anything if they didn't sell your stuff.
Right. Exactly.
So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that I talked you into that a long time ago doing probate deals, and you pulled some lists, and you still get some calls randomly occasionally.
Yeah, I have 2 that I'm debating knocking down right now.
Yeah.
I have 2 sitting in my inbox right now that,
yeah,
we'll see. They're still sitting. This may not be a super kosher move, but I sometimes like dragging my feet on them because you kind of let the people go through the dog and pony show and then go, yes, because like, I showed up, I got to walk through it for 10 seconds. I got bit by one where they had an agent who was selling it off market.
Right.
They had every wholesaler in town. I wanted it for different reasons. That house ended up haunting me. I ended up having to put an entire... I thought I was going to have to do structural steel beams in the basement. I ended up having to build an entirely new...
Oh, that was that wall? Yeah, I remember that.
Well, 20 grand later.
Yeah.
Still made money on that house.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have 2 weeks later, but I still made money on that house.
Right.
Much, but I made money.
Right.
But I wanted an Airbnb right there. Again, really glad that I didn't. There are so many things that I got saved from that one, but I just kind of gave up on that at that point. I was like, I don't want to be one of 12 walking through the house.
Right.
And then I was actually the highest offer on that one. It's the only way I would have gotten that house. It was in my neighborhood. It would be like you bidding on the house next door.
Right.
Same. I bought one across the street from me. Same thing.
Right. Yeah. You have to the dog and pony show. They're frustrating because if we find out we usually will tell the seller it's like we're just not going to come.
Yeah.
Like we don't do that game. If you're bidding, if you're going to have us bidding against 10, 15 other people, I know for a fact before I even come, I'm not going to be your eyes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I'm not going to come back and renegotiate you afterwards and ask you to cut your price down. Like a lot of investors play that game where they'll lock you up and then renegotiate you later. And they're perfectly, and this, I mean, it's not illegal to do that. Like, and it's not necessarily unethical in all cases, but sometimes
it is one way of avoiding.
It is one way, but I don't like that. So I don't do that. And we say we're going to do what we say we're going to do, and we're going to buy the house, and we say we're going to buy it, and we're not going to jerk you around. Yeah. So if you don't want to be jerked around and you want to know that this is a done deal, here's my offer. It's not going to be your highest, but if you want a better number, then chase the other number. So
yeah, and I think I think you're dead right. You have to disqualify privilege again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, dude, this was great, man. Chatting with you, always good chatting with you. I'm glad you came in town. You happened to be in town for another meeting earlier today, and we're like, hey, let's do a podcast.
Knock it out.
And then you're hitting the road back to Cincy tomorrow, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got a couple more meetings across town, and then headed back to Cincinnati.
Cool, man. Well, it's good to see you, brother. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Always good chatting with you, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you want to get in touch with Colin, how can you're a little social media hiatus, right?
I'm not easy to find right now. The best way is probably to go find My wife runs our Vero Home Designs. Vero Home is our company. There are ways to find. We're on Facebook, Instagram.
Yep.
I don't know if I don't think we're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. We've got a couple videos.
You're on YouTube.
So most of it's Vero Home or Vero Home Designs.
VERO.
Yep.
Vero Home Design. Yeah, Christina does some beautiful, beautiful design work. She does a really good job. She's very talented.
Absolutely. And we're looking to expand that here shortly too. So
cool, man. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time, Colin. And all right, guys, thanks for joining the podcast, and stay tuned for the next one. Talk to you later.